sixth graders, in lesson 1.9, we are going to talk about properties. These are rules in math, and rules that you can use to do math. Okay? These are kind of like rules that you use when you're playing a game. All right? For example, let's use a baseball example. Okay? We'll use a baseball example. A pitcher in baseball can try to keep the runners close to first base, but they have to follow certain rules. Okay? If they don't follow those rules, it's called a balk. And then the runner gets to go to the next base, is awarded next base. So they can play, the pitcher can play within the rules, but they can't violate those rules. And there are certain rules that you can use when you're doing math that help you, but you can't violate those rules. Okay? This is one rule. This rule, in math they call it a property, which means that it works when you use it. And this is called the commutative property. The commutative property works for both multiplication and for addition. And what the commutative property says is that you can switch the order of the numbers and still get the same answer. So whether or not you have 5 plus 8, it equals 13. Or you can switch that order if you want to and add 8 plus 5 and get the same answer. 5 plus 8 is 13, 8 plus 5 is 13. And the reason that that is true is because of the commutative property of addition. Commutative also works for multiplication. In other words, 7 times 5 is 35, or 5 times 7 is 35. And so it doesn't matter. You can switch the numbers and get the same answer. Okay? Are you writing these down? This is called the commutative property of multiplication and addition. The commutative property. You can switch the numbers and get the same answer. There's another one called the associative property for multiplication and addition. Now in this case, you'll always have more than 2 numbers to work with. There'll be at least 3 numbers when we're talking about the associative property. And the order will stay the same for the associative property. The order of the numbers doesn't change, but what changes is what we do first. So, you can do addition or multiplication in a different order and get the same answer. In other words, you can either do 3 plus 4 first, and then add 7. So the first 2 terms, and then the third term, and get 14. Or, we could put parentheses around the second set, and do 4 plus 7 first. And then go back and add the first term. So it's kind of like 1 plus 2, the first term plus the second term, and then add the third term. Or the second and the third term, and then add the first term. And it doesn't change the answer. You get the same answer. There will always be parentheses that are moved when you're looking at the associative property. The parentheses may be around the first 2 numbers in the first sentence, and then the second two numbers in the second sentence. Okay? And that is called the associative property for addition, or the associative property for multiplication. It works for multiplication too. You could do 2 times 3, which is 6, and then times 4, which is 24. Or you could do 3 times 4 first, which is 12, and then multiply the 2, which is 24.
For associative and commutative, I spent the whole summer on Alex math, knowing that, so
Yeah.
and it's pretty easy.
Yep, you know, you were first introduced to these two properties in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
That was the first time you encountered these two properties,
And
was
then
in
in
2nd
4th
grade.
grade we went to identity.
Yep, we're going to talk about identity property. We're going to talk about the distributive property and the zero property of multiplication. Olivia.
Wait, so there's 5.
Yeah, there's 5 properties that we're going to talk about today. Okay?
Wait, I'm still reading.
These definitions are in your book, so you may have to copy them out of your book. Okay?
No, not the difference. I was copying the example.
Yeah. Now, we have to go on to the identity property. There's also identity properties for addition and multiplication, but they're different. Okay? Identity property means that when you answer, you get the original number as the answer. The answer is the original number that you started with. Okay? So for addition, when you add 0, you get the original answer. You get the original number you started with. Identity property, I would write down identity property, any number plus 0 equals that number. And any number times 1 equals that number. Any number plus 0 equals that number. Any number times 1 equals that number. Then write down zero property of multiplication. Any number times 0 is 0. That's an actual property. That's a rule. Any number times 0 is 0. A rule means that it always works. These properties always work. That's why they are properties. They're rules. And then the last one is called the distributive property. The distributive property. That's a property of multiplication. But it's when multiplication is being applied to numbers in parentheses. So it looks like this. When there's a number written outside of the parentheses, everybody stop writing a second so you can watch what I'm showing you. When there's a number outside of the parentheses, what we do with it is we multiply it by each number inside the parentheses. Kind of like, have you played cards?
Yes.
If the dealer is going to give 3 cards to everybody, this arrow shows multiplying by 3 to each number inside the parentheses. You have to do the same thing to each number, or the dealer has to deal the same number of cards to each of the people. So you have to distribute the 3 to each number. That's why it's called the distributive property. So 3 and then parentheses 4 plus 7 is equal to 3 times 4 plus, and the plus sign stays there, 3 times 7. Okay? So for your assignment tomorrow, I want you to practice identifying these properties. Okay? So it is from the page 27, and I want you to do 7 through 20. 7 through 20 for tomorrow.
Tomorrow or?
For tomorrow.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's fine.